Today's daf is daf Yud Beis, and we'll start with Hava Uvda Binarda on the third line. And the Malveh was Tovea from the Yisomim, a chov that was owed to someone else, to this Malveh, and the father, the Lov, had died, so there was no recourse to collect from the Lov himself, and they collected from the Yisomim, the Agbu Dayani Denarda, and the Dayanim of Narda were magbet to the Malveh avodim of the Yisomim that they inherited from their father. And similarly, Havi Uvda Befum Pedisa, the Agbe Rav Chana Bar Bizna, he was magbet on behalf of the Malveh, confiscating the avodim of the Yisomim that they inherited from their father. Omelahu Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman turns to the Dayanim of Nardoi and Zilia Hu Ahadiru. Go and give back the avodim to the Yisomim. And this is called Toeh Bidvar Mishnah, because Rav Nachman has a brisa that supports his position that you cannot collect avodim from the Yisomim. And Elo, he threatens them, if you don't return, if you don't guarantee that the avodim are returned to the Yisomim, I'm going to collect the roof, confiscate the roof on the top of your head of this beautiful mansion in order to pay the Yisomim for the value of the avodim that you collected and took away from the Yisomim. Amalei Rav of Nachman, why do you say that, Rav Nachman, that this is against a Mishnah? We have so many shitos that agree that you can collect avodim from Yisomim. Ha'ula was the one who holds that you can collect avodim from Yisomim. Rabbi Lazar, he also agreed, and Dayoni Denar Doiv Rav Chana Bar Bizna. So all the above agree unanimously that you can collect avodim from the Yisomim. Mar Kiman Svirle. So you, Rav Nachman, seem to have no branch to hang on. Amalei, Rav Nachman says, I have a brisa. The Tony Avimi taught the following brisa: Prosbol chal al hakarka, v'eno chal al ha'avodim. When a love owes money to a malveh, and the seventh year comes by, and it should be mishamei techov, then we have a takon of hill of Prosbol, which only operates if the lova has karka. But if the lova has avodim, then the prosbol is not valid, because avodim has the same status as metaltalin. And furthermore, this brisa, once again, in the Seifa, as we'll learn now, indicates that the status of avodim is that of metaltalin. Why? Because it says metaltalin niknim im hakarka ve'ein niknim im ha'avodim. Now we're talking about kinyan agav, and when you makne karka, you could be makne metaltalin agav karka, but you cannot be makne avodim karka with avodim, meaning, or metaltal with avodim, meaning you cannot be magbe agav avodim, because avodim have the status of metaltal, and kinyan agav only works on karka. So therefore, Rav Nachman holds like this brisa, and the underlying principle of this brisa is that avodim have a din of metaltal, and anyone who says otherwise and maintains the position that avodim have a din of karka is Toeh Bidvar Mishnah, which means that we're choser, and if not, the dayanim themselves are held responsible for any loss of money incurred by as a result of their toes. The Gemara says, perhaps the status of avodim, whether it's karka or metaltalin, is a subject of controversy between Tanoim in the brisa of Agav. And here we have a brisa that says the following: Mocha lo avodim v'karkos. If a man sells avodim v'karkos, hechzik ba'avodim lo kona karkos, v'karkos lo kona avodim. it means that the status of avodim is that of metaltalin, and therefore you cannot be makne or kone karkos agav avodim, because agav only works agav karka. And if he makes a chazok in karkos, then he's not kone the avodim. So this Tana is of the opinion that avodim dinom ki metaltalin. However, keep in mind that since the Eved moves nov v'nod mimakom l'makom, then if you would make a kinyan of Eved agav karka, you would have to have the Eved standing in the karka. And that we're going to see later on in the sugya. Bottom line is that this brisa maintains that Eved is metaltalin. Now, karkos u'metaltalin, if a man sells to his friend karka and metaltalin, hechse b'karka, kona metaltalin, so he could be kona metaltalin agav karka. But if he makes a kinyan on the metaltalin, kona karka, there's no such thing as a kinyan agav metaltalin. And if he sells to his friend avodim u'metaltalin, hechzik ba'avodim lo kona metaltalin, v'metaltalin kona avodim. In other words, avodim could not serve as a kinyan aga because they don't have the status of karka, but rather of metaltalin. And if he makes a kinyan of metaltalin, then he's not kona avodim because metaltalin, every single metaltal requires its own kinyan. So here we have a brisa. We'll call it for our purposes the brisa Rishona, because the Gemara is about to quote a contradictory brisa, which we'll call the brisa Shniya. But according to the brisa Rishona that we've learned up to this point, avodim have the status of metaltalin, vatanya. But now we have a different brisa. We'll call brisa number 2, brisa achrona, hichzik ba'avodim kona metaltalin, which means that you could be kona agav avodim, which means that avodim have the status of karka. My love, shouldn't we assume Demar Sovar, the second brisa holds that avodim kimekarke domi, and therefore hichzik ba'avodim kona metaltalin with aga. Umar Sovar, but the first brisa holds that avodim kimetaltalin domi, as we discussed. And now the Gemara rejects it. Omer of Ika Bereder of Ami. Now the names here are very important. So if you have a tendency of underlining in the Gemara itself, and underline Omer of Ika Berei Dirav Ami. We're going to now have 2 Lishonos in Rav Ika Berei Dirav Ami. Now we're learning the first Lishna. To Kuli Alma Avonim Kimikarkoi Domi. The status of Eved is that of Karka. Again, the second Lishna in Rav Ika is going to say the exact opposite, that Avodim are metaltal, which is the way we understood it. But here, the first Lishna says avodim is kimekarki domi. And now we can understand the second brisa, because if you recall, the second brisa was of the opinion that avodim kimekarkoi domi, and therefore you could be makna agav avodim, metaltalin agav avodim. Is kona shapir. For Tanya, the second brisa says kona shapir, that if you make a chazok on the avodim, you would kona the metaltalin ba'agav shapir. We understand that very well. The Tanya, let's go back to the first brisa that holds that if you make a chazok on avodim, you cannot be kona metaltalin, because the din of avodim is that of metaltalin. But now Rav Ika is saying that avodim is kimekarkoi domi. So we're going to have to say that even though avodim are karka, nevertheless you cannot be kone metaltalin agav avodim. So in other words, the halacha and the application of kinyan agav is restricted. There are tanoim, there are conditions as to when kinyan agav is valid. And one of the conditions is be'inan karka dumya da'ar mitzurus beYehuda. There's a pasuk in Divrei Yomi. We'll get to this pasuk very shortly. The low night. So you need not just karka, which has a shem karka, which means has a halachic status of karka, but you also need karka in the physical sense that it's omed kavua bimkomo. That's called lo naidi. And then you have something which is so solid like karka that doesn't move, fully olam void, then you could use it for aga. But if you have something which is technically karka, because it has a shem karka, like an Eved has a hekesh to karka, but nevertheless it's not lo naidi, but rather it's naidi, meaning it's nov and nod mi makom u'makom, then you cannot use that nov and nod type of karka as a springboard for kinyan agav to be kone metaltalin agav avodim. And the second brisa that says hichzik b'avodim kona metaltalin, they hold that you don't need karka dumya di'ari mitzuros b'Yehuda, but rather you need a shem karka. So again, would a shem karka without the cheft of karka, without the mitzias of karka, be considered karka for a kinyan agav? Nafkaminas gabi avodim, and that's going to be the machlokas between two brisos. Whereas the first brisa holds that not every karka is karka as far as agav is concerned. You need lo naidi. So therefore, the first brisa maintains you cannot be kona metalton agav avodim because avodim is naidi. The second brisa, on the other hand, that says that you could be kona metalton agav avodim, that brisa is of the opinion that all karka, if it has a shem halachic legal status of karka, then it works for kinyan agav, and we don't need dumya di'ara mitzuros b'Yehuda, which means lo night. And now the Gemara is going to quote a Mishnah in Kiddushin, which deals with kinyan agav. This nan we learned in Kiddushin daf chavav. Nechasim she'ein lehem achrayis niknim im nechasim sheyesh lehem achrayis b'kesef b'shtar u'b'chazak, which means ein lehem achrayis is called metaltal. Nechasim sheish lehem achrayis is karka. And if you want to be kona karka with one of three possible alternative methods, either kesef, shtar, chazaka, then agav the karka you could be kona metaltal or makna metaltal. Minani mili, what's the source in Tanakh for the efficacy of a kinyan agav? The Amar Chizkiah the Makra pasuk in Divrei Yom Beis Perikov Al Vayitein Lahem Avia Matonos Ravos Lekesev Lezav Lemigdonos Im Are Mitzuros BeYisrael. And the pasuk is referring to Yehoshaphat HaMelech, who gave his children matonos of karkos and metaltalin, and he's makna the metaltalin agav mekarkos, and that's called Im Are Mitzuros BeYehuda. Now we have another lishna in Rav Ika Bereder Rav Ami. We'll call it the lishna basra of Rav Ika. The exact opposite. The kuli alma avdi kimetaltalin. Until now, we maintained, according to the first lishna of Rav Ika, that kuli alma lo pligi, that Eved has a shem karka. Now we're saying in the Ika Diamri, the exact opposite. Everybody agrees, both brisos, that the avodim have the status of a talpud. But now we're in trouble. We work out very well, smooth, with regard to the first price. Vatanya lo kana shop, the first price that says that if you make a chazaka metaltal on avodim, you're not going to metaltal, and that works out very well because avodim have the status of metaltal. There's no agav of metaltal. V'hod is sign of what about the second brisa that says that if you made a chazaka on the avodim, you could be kona metaltalin through agav. Is ba'odan olav. When it says in the second brisa hichzik ba'avodim kona metaltalin, it's only because odan olav. the metaltalim are on the Eved. Like, for example, his begodim, his hat. Ukshakones Eved, when he purchases and acquires ownership on the Eved becomes a chotzer of the lokeach, and therefore it could be kona metaltalin. But it's not a kinyan metaltalin agav. It's a kinyan metaltalin through chotzer. So the Gemara raises the following objection. B'chi odam olav my havi. Are you telling me that because the metaltal are on top of the Eved is mobile, then the Eved serves and functions as a chotzer? Chotzer malechesi, v'chotzer maleches lo kana. We know that chotzer has to be kavua b'mkoma. It can't be a chotzer maleches. V'chi tema be omed. Maybe you'll say the Eved is standing, and if he's not moving, therefore he's not a chotzer maleches. So if he's what? If he's omed, then he can serve, the Eved could serve as a chotzer, to be kona metaltalim in the chotzer, the kinyan chotzer. Omar Rava kol she'ilu mahalech lo kana, omed v'yoshev lo kana. There's no difference between Yoshev and mahalech. Mahalech has the same status as omed or Yoshev, since he always has the possibility of going on his own. That's mafkir l'shem chotzer. The hilchas abekafus. And we're going to paskin that under what conditions can the Baal be makne or kona metaltalin agav Eved? That's only if the Eved is tied up. Kafus. Now, there's a whole discussion here which is a little bit beyond the purview of our discussion today. Is it enough that the Eved is kafus, or do we also need yoshev? Okay. In any event, let's just summarize two different approaches how to reconcile these two brises. If you hold that an Eved has the status of karka, and then we're going to say the brise that says you cannot be kona v'taltal and agav the Eved is of the opinion that you need karka that's dumya li are mitzuras b'Yisrael, and not something that's novid no. If you hold that Eved has the status of metaltal, and the brisa that says you could be kona metaltal and agav the Eved is talking about an Eved kafus, and the kinyan is not a kinyan agav, but rather a kinyan chutz.